Good afternoon, viewers. My name is Hamisi Mboga. I am now consulting on leadership and governance, and today's topic is digital divide. I'm speaking here and discussing here on behalf of Jaslika, and the topic of digital divide today, we are lucky. We have Professor Ahmed Ferej. He's an associate professor of the University of Eldoret in Kenya in the Department of Technology and Education. His education experience is over 30 years, and he lectures in the field of technology. That's how lucky we are. He's also interested in technology, how technology has been used to solve people's problems. But he's also concerned by the prevailing digital divide and its impact on population, but specifically on education. That's how a professor will share the views with us. Now, if we start this concept and this topic of digital divide, Professor Ahmed, what is digital divide?
Thank you very much, Hamisi, for giving me this opportunity to talk about this subject of technology in general, and in particular, the concept or the thinking around what digital divide is all about. Digital divide, as the word expresses, divide means it's an uneven distribution or difference between two levels. So digital divide is any uneven distribution in the access to, use of, or impact of ICT between any number of distinct groups. It can be between individuals, it can be within a social group, it can be geographical, it can be geopolitical, or any other criteria that is used. In other words, it's a difference between one level and another. So digital divide is traditionally considered to be a question of having or not having access to ICT. From a global mobile phone penetration, it's becoming relatively inequality, as an example of an inequality between those who have bandwidth differences. So in other countries where everybody has ICT and they have internet, digital divide would mean the difference between the level of bandwidth, the strength of their Wi-Fi systems or internet. Because the stronger the internet you have, the more you can do with it, the quicker the information traveling and so on. So digital divide is not one concept, it is relative. In other words, it can be between developed and developing countries. Within developing countries, there's also a divide. Within developed countries, there's also a divide. But in my discussion today, I would really like to talk about the digital divide in the context of a developing country like Kenya, for example.
Now, everybody is talking about digital divide, digital divide. Why is it important, Professor?
A digital divide is we are living in a seriously technological environment that is developing very rapidly. And what happens in one part of the world quickly affects another. You know this thing about the global village. Something happens in the United States, we can instantly have access to that information. So being able to be technologically up to date in as far as the ICT is concerned gives you a lot of power. It gives you the power to get information. It gives you the power to do many things. And I'll give you an example. In our own environment in Kenya, for example, through the exploitation of of ICT, government has been able to do most of its things digitally. For example, issues of tax. If you recall, Hamisi, a few years ago, at the end of each year, You had to go through the painful process of completing your tax returns manually. Quite a taxing experience. Now you can do it online. Things to do with getting your driving license renewed, you can now do that online. You don't have to go and line up. Issues to do with land registry, immigration services, and many other services that the government offers to its citizenry are now done online. So digital is the world of today. If you are not properly set up for digital application, then you are at a serious distinct disadvantage with the rest of the world. At the private sector, we have banks that are totally or partly or mostly online now. You can withdraw cash, you can transact your cash online, and you can send in application for loans, you can pay bills, you can transfer money from the bank to other systems like the mobile money system. So it's here with us. A common usage also of digital technology now is something called in the commercial sector, something called online shopping or e-commerce. It's now quite common for people who live in urban areas to order and pay for goods online. You don't have to travel to the store, and you can do this both nationally or internationally. You can order goods from any parts of the world, pay for it without meeting anybody on a face-to-face basis, and the goods will be delivered at your address. In the urban sectors, you don't have to go out to eat. You can order food from your favorite restaurant and it will be delivered at your doorstep, and you don't have to step outside. So these are some of the benefits of digitization. For example, if you live in some of the bigger towns now, you can hail a taxi, you can travel in a taxi. All this is done digitally. You don't have to do what we used to do in the past, wave at a taxi to stop for you. So everybody now in Kenya, for example, as an example, know what mobile money is all about through the Safaricom M-Pesa platform. We can do everything now using the system. So this digital service is now totally revolutionized. Banks resisted, but now they have had to accept. And there's a good positive partnership between banks and our citizenry. In Kenya, we have a phenomenon called Mama Mboga. Mama Mboga is people who are in the informal sector selling and buying goods. Even at that level, the mobile money services have solved a lot of logistical issues related to ordering and payment for supplies. So, in other words, digital technology is life. Hamisi, we are now living in something called the fourth industrial revolution. And the fourth industrial revolution is totally driven by digital technology. And we can go and talk about this as we go forward.
But Professor, are there challenges? Because the example of using mobile money, some people have been raising issues. Sometimes you forget to put one number and it goes to somebody else. The money is not reversed. If you call the money, for example, Safaricom, sometimes you don't get your money back. And also I'm told that what are the other problems, maybe other challenges of using digital device?
It's in the case of mobile money, if you have that problem, if you recall a few years ago, if you made a mistake and send money to the wrong person, chances are you probably would lose your money, or if that person was kind enough, they would send the money back to you. But today, if, say, for example, you are using the Safaricom platform, for example, and you send money to somebody else, instantly you can reverse the transaction. And in the worst case scenario, if that person on the other side who receives your money and withdraws the money immediately, so they can't get it back, they will actually freeze his account, and anytime he puts money there, they will take the money out for you. So if you look at it, the number of people who lose money this way is now much smaller. And that may be more down to digital illiteracy. they don't understand the system as well. And so you find that this happens more with older people. The younger people are much more tuned to the system. This is also a question of digital divide between generations. The older people are less savvy than the younger people in terms of the use of technology.
Okay, Professor, but some people are interested, and in fact, I am interested. Is there any gender dimension in this concept of digital divide?
The issue the gender dimension in digital divide has more to do with it has more to do with unfavorable conditions concerning employment. You know, like what you call gender differences in employment, earnings, education, income, but not technophobia or low ability. So women are not inherently less able to use digital technology. In fact, in some cases and some studies, they have shown that women are actually more active users of digital technology than men. In countries like the US, for example, there's a 2018 study which shows that 89% of men and 88% of women can be exacerbated more because of other reasons like income, inability to have the equipment that you require for use in digital technology, or inability to pay for internet or access to internet, but not gender per se.
Oh, this is good. And because some people who are thinking maybe people can use a digital divide to even make the gap bigger between the gender. So if it's on those aspects, how do we address them? These aspects of employment, these aspects of service provision.
I know that this is a historical issue that women have tended to lag behind in some of these indicators, but not because of their inability or intellectual ability, but more to do with societal and cultural practices. But in my view, as we go forward in terms of education and in terms of mixing up with people in other societies, our women are catching up. And I know, for example, in Kenya, I don't know jobs. You apply for a job, and if you merit it, you get the job, and it doesn't matter whether you are a woman or a man in terms of what you earn. But other countries is actually very distinct. If you're a woman, you might earn 10 or 20% less than a man, and that is there in their procedures. We don't have that. So if somebody pays a woman less than a man for the same job in Kenya, it would be illegal. So I don't know any ways to accelerate the process of culture change. These things take time, but in my own life, I have seen dramatic improvement in the environment where gender is much less pronounced than it was when we were kids.
Professor, in fact, I was coming to this issue of the Kenyan situation. So what is the state of digital divide in Kenya with your experience, with your knowledge?
Digital divide in Kenya is, as I've spoken earlier, that at the institutional level, government and private enterprises, digitization is at an advanced stage. You will find, for example, even during the recent pandemic, that at the enterprise level, many enterprises that wanted to continue operating when things were closing up could actually allow their workers to work at home. But that only happens at certain levels and categories, because for you to work at home, you must have some basic tools to work digitally. You must have computers, you must have access to internet, or you must have at least a smartphone. But at the individual level, that's where the divide is quite distinct. And it goes parallel to income or wealth of the society. The more money people earn, or the more wealthy an individual is, the more digital advantage they are. The poorer you are, the more depressed you are in terms of technological access. So you'll find that at the lower end of the social economic strata, more people are less digitally endowed in terms of access. Whereas middle class and upper level, the level of digitization is quite advanced. The most available technological tool at the lower end is usually a phone, and you'll find that a lot of people now work very hard at all levels to at least have a smartphone, but that is still not quite possible. But even when you have the smartphone, you will still need to have money to buy the bundles. And at the moment, I would say bundles or internet access is still expensive. It has been coming down, to be honest. It's been coming down quite a bit, but for some people at the lower level of the social economic strata, being able to buy your bundles and be able to go on internet is still beyond their reach. And of course, when you don't have that, then you have a serious disadvantage, because information is not at your fingertips, as is the case for the group above.
Yeah, thank you, Prof. There's one area which most of us are interested. Now we have this pandemic. We have COVID-19. How has it affected the issue of digital divide and the livelihoods of the people of the world?
The COVID-19 pandemic has shed light on the inequalities in access to the internet and digital technologies throughout the world. The countries with advanced digitization could cope much more easily because workers can stay at home and they have powerful internet. They can continue doing a lot of things from remotely, to the extent that people are now questioning whether there's any logic to go to work every day and cause traffic jams and all the problems related to traveling from home to work and back. That you can actually do most of the things that you're doing at the office at home. So countries that had this in place were well placed to handle continuity of work. But countries that didn't have this, we have had serious problems. And I'll talk about this in education a little bit, but you will find that in the sector of education, if we were well endowed in digital access, we would have been able to continue learning as we are kept away from school. Unfortunately, this hasn't been the case, and therefore we have kids who are running around at home without access to education because of that digital divide. So to that extent, and that says the same thing to what I said earlier, that at the individual level, the problem is much more serious. At the institutional level or enterprise level, things can happen, and things are happening because those sectors are well set up in terms of their digital access and abilities.
Thank you, Professor. Has the Kenyan system of education and all of us learned anything in this pandemic? Are we prepared now? Because I think the dates for opening schools and universities is being pushed. Are we ready? Are we prepared? Is it because of the digital divide that is holding us back?
Hamisi, there is a lot of issues related to education, much more so than the other sectors. Like I said earlier, because at the institutional level, a lot of government function could continue because they were already digitized. For example, even if you look at the government payment system, the thing they call financial management system where they pay for bills, where you send money to counties, for example. That's all digitized now. And so even without people moving from point A to point B, those services could still be dispensed with. Like I said earlier, things to do with land, things to do with that they could still, these things really could still continue. Companies were still able to work from home. I know, for example, one person who is working in the HR department. She's the head of the HR department. Even before the pandemic, she literally could work at home for more than a month without going to the office. And her work was getting done. However, the way our schools are set up and the way that our educational system was so much behind in terms of digital or online application caught us all unawares. And because of that, you will find that many institutions have not resumed, including universities and including public secondary schools and colleges since March 15th when the schools were closed. And the main reason is simple, that institutions cannot, if you have to keep the public health protocol where you have to keep social distance of 1.5 meters, for example, and have access to water to enforce the hygienic rigor, you'll find that in a classroom prior to before the pandemic, some classes average 60 students. Now, with the protocol put out by the public health experts, you need a space of at least 1 meter to 1.5 meters between students or desks. When you apply this, a classroom that previously held 60 students will now only hold about 20, 1/3 of the original number. So you have 40 students you have to find room for. And that means brick and mortar, if you are to go by classrooms, you have to construct 3 times the size of the school you already have. And you know that that is not a very easy thing to do from the point of view of a financial outlay, and at the same time also the physical construction of schools or buildings take time. And so this is something that the government, I think, has really been struggling with, because if they go by the advice that is given by the health sector, then they need to have more classrooms. But where are you going to put the classrooms up? Some of them don't even have the ground to put up the classroom. But the main problem is simply funding. You don't have the money to build up these schools. So what do? You stay at home. Now, I don't know if we just go with that one criteria, I don't know how the problem will be solved. Because if we come to January when we think the schools might open and we still cannot, the pandemic is not low enough for us to break down the requirement for social distancing, then you can see we have a serious problem. And to be honest, I don't know what we can do about this. But look at it this way now. While the public institutions have been closed, many private institutions have been functional, simply because they can put up online tuition and communicate and engage their students from a distance. So kids are at home, so they have no risk of exposure to the pandemic, to the virus, and they can do their classes day in and day out, almost from the time we closed schools in March. Some of these private schools have been going on. According to a Safaricom, one of the mobile companies, data, about 1.5 million children are getting learning online. But we have 15 million children in Kenya who are in the public school sector. So that's only about 10% or less. So a very small number of kids are able to access online education. But if you recall, a few years ago, the government had promised to provide laptops or tablets to each child starting school. If that program had been implemented, most of the problem we have with online learning now would probably much more smaller. It would be now a question of providing internet access and other logistical, but the main device, the receptor, which is the digital, the tablet or the laptop, would already have been provided. And the kids may have already had exposure and therefore the ability to manipulate the instrument. So we actually lost an opportunity there. But you see, that is now, that's why I said in the education sector, the divide is seriously exaggerated by the poverty level. So the poor are not going to school, and the middle and the upper classes, their children are learning.
So the private public school system is creating another divide, because if a quarter of the Kenyan pupils or students are learning online and 3/4 are not able to, when we come back to full-fledged education, what happens to the system where we always give the same questions to everybody? We don't have individual assessment in our system. Are these problems going to be solved, Professor?
I don't know. First of all, it is not even 3/4. It's only 10%. So 90% of the kids have no access. And even when you talk about a private school that is running a national curriculum, it's only a small number of those private schools that can do this. The larger number of private schools that are rural-based and the informal settlements in urban areas are not having access on online learning. So they are being left behind, and of course the government is saying everybody will repeat. So these students who have been learning online and on the national curriculum, they will have to repeat some of the things that they're already doing online. But the important thing, Hamis, is that when you keep kids away from learning for a year, there's a lot of regression. They will regress, and effectively when you bring them back, they will not be at the spot where you left them. You'll have to go back and pick up the pieces. So there will be a lot of work by the teachers, but clearly the kids who have been kept warm through engagement with their schools will have an advantage.
Professor,
be more
one of my colleagues is worried about repeating, because he says a few kids that are in this class, if they repeat next year, there's a class behind them that was going to take over. Are we going to have double classes? Because this problem is getting bigger and bigger.
Of course, there's a lot of problems to the whole thing, eh? Because one of the things we have a tradition that at age 6 class, the kids are going to class 1. So if people are repeating, the students who are in class 1 are going to repeat class 1. The new class 1s cannot come in. And you see, then that manifests itself right through the system to the top. I don't know. The minister had a task force looking at this. So I have not read their report to understand exactly how this is to be handled. But a lot of parents are concerned that their kids will be made to lose a year in something that they had nothing to do with. But to be honest, I know there's a huge problem, and those people who are handling it really have their hands full.
What is the experience in other countries on this particular issue?
In countries that have digital empowerment, the problem was less. They could continue online, and they indeed continued online until when now they can go back to school on a face-to-face, and they could continue staying at home for a while and not lose a lot. Some of the things they lose is, for example, there's advantages to going to school that even parents now all of a sudden realizing, because one, children staying at home create a new problem for parents. Who will supervise them all the time? These kids can wreak havoc. But at the same time, children are social beings. So when you keep them from school, you take away that element of socialization between children. and developing social skills, how to live with each other. So there is a big loss that way. And so all of a sudden, we actually do realize that a school provides is a very important socializing agent over and above just the concept of providing knowledge and information. So there is that issue, and I don't know how that will be solved. And even the kids now who are learning online, they are missing that. So everybody wants schools to be open because there are other gains to be made by schools being open. But as you said earlier, the issue of repeating classes or making up for lost time will be something the government has to find ways of addressing. I mean, if you put educators down to think about it, I'm sure they can come up with solutions. You could, for example, distribute the work in the curriculum along the line and do a little more each year, and be able to eventually finish. Yeah.
How about thinking of this concept of progressive learning, progressive teaching, carry over, whatever you decide you had last year can be taken over to the next year, individualized. When you go to Europe, you see somebody just studying one subject and they can have a whole break of 1 year and can come back to continue. Here you can't because there's a standard time for examination. We are in a bigger problem, Prof, on this one. What would be your recommendations?
I don't want to overthink my superiors, but like I said, this is an issue that if people look at it soberly, we can actually come up with practical solutions. There are people who think, Hamisi, for example, that schools are overrated. Yes. That everything we learn in school really is not essential. We can do away with some things and still be able to function effectively as educated and so maybe out of every 100% of the stuff we learn, we only needed 10 or 20% of it to guide our lives. So we could do these things, so it doesn't mean that and of course we know that you and I have come from an era where some of our parents were not educated, but they were still able to cope with life. So it's not that that if you miss something in school, then that means that that's the end of you. I don't think so.
Okay. Given the time that we have, given the situation, I think there's so much we must do about the digital divide. I'm looking at sensitization, the school system, but the non-school systems. Are they sensitized on this issue that we must focus now, refocus? Political class, are they on the same wavelength with us? Are they learning from the other countries about what's
I think everybody's learning. I think everybody's learning. Everybody's learning from this environment. If you recall, before the pandemic, none of us, most people did not know how to hold an online meeting. Yes. Now almost everybody is an expert in holding online meetings, to the point where people are wondering, why did I have to go to Nairobi for this meeting when I could have effectively participated in the same meeting from Mombasa or Eldoret or Kisumu? We spend a lot of resources ever so often to go to congregate together for meetings. Now with this pandemic, people are realizing I don't have to drive, I don't have to fly all the way to New York to attend a 2-hour meeting. Honestly, that's such a heavy investment in terms of time and resources. Why can't we do it online? So you can see that everybody actually is rethinking this whole concept of digitization, that actually, if we use digitization properly, we can be able to get ahead. I'll give you an example. At the start of the pandemic, I had a class that there were only 7 students in that class, but 5 of them came from Uganda and 2 were Kenyans. So every week, these 5 students who are actually lecturers in a university in Uganda were taking the road transport to Eldoret, attend class, mine and others, for 2-3 days, and then go back to Uganda. They were to teach for 2 days and come back to Kenya every week for their program. And so when the pandemic cut us short, we discussed with my class and we agreed to go online. And we were able to do the same thing We were able to write papers, we were able to present papers, and we actually finished our program. The only thing that we could not come out clearly about is issues to do with exams, because the university had not clarified these issues. So for those who actually went online at that time, they covered the material, and the issues of the exam were to come later. But now think about it. These chaps were traveling from Uganda every week. If we were digitizing the program, then it doesn't matter where you are. You could be in Lusaka, you could be in Kampala, you could be in Mombasa, you could be in Nairobi, and we could all form a class. And so all of a sudden we are thinking, wow, maybe we were wasting a lot of opportunities to get to more people by limiting ourselves to physical contact in one space. But the way we can now do it, you can have a student in Mombasa, another student in Kisumu, another one in Kampala, another one in Kigali, another one in New York, and you are all able to take the same class. So there is a very big advantage. So everybody is actually, there is like a bulb is going off in our heads and saying, look, I think something is going on here. So if we say the pandemic has a silver lining, I think one of the silver lining that the pandemic has brought to our attention is the fact that we can do a lot more digitally than we were bothering to think about before the pandemic.
This is very interesting because whatever we're doing, for example, I think this is a good example. This conference, this discussion,
yes,
is in that gap of digital divide. I want to agree
exactly
on that one. The other example I wanted to share with you and the viewers. I was supposed to attend an international conference on local and regional authorities in Texas from 23rd to 26th of this month. And we couldn't go because of this pandemic. We have done it here. I've been here 3 days. I'm attending the conference, 23rd, 24th, 25th. I'm seeing all the presenters, I'm making some comments. This is the in thing. I think we should find a way of telling everybody to start this road, reduce the cost. I didn't go. I didn't pay the transport. I didn't pay the accommodation. They waived my entrance fees for the conference, and I was in my house here attending the conference. So I think we are going that way. But how can we make it? How can we beat the drums louder for everybody to get this concept of digital divide?
I don't think we need to beat the drum any louder. Everybody already actually knows that. Has that information. The only thing, of course, is that change is not always sudden. If we had been allowed to do this thing at our own time, we might have taken another 10 years or 20 to reach where you are, that you can attend a conference in Texas without going to Texas. But of course, you know yourself that there's other benefits of attending, intangible benefits of attending, that people will not want to forego. For example, the idea of a foreign country travel it's nice. You can get a chance to go maybe shop and so on and so forth. But in reality, when necessary, maybe this is the way to go. Not maybe the way to go. Many people are already going. Yeah, I'm a member of a board, and we have not had meetings until last week when I went to Nairobi. For 7 months, we have not had face-to-face meetings, but we've been transacting the business online. We've had meetings online like this. So indeed, it's something that is very, very real. One of the things that is also coming up is that previously, if you wanted to have a meeting in Eldoret or Mombasa or Nairobi, but one of your members is traveling for another meeting in another place, they will not be able to physically come back and join you, even though the two meetings may be at a different time. But because they're at a different time, let's say your meeting in Mombasa was at 10 and the other meeting in Nairobi was at 12 o'clock, then this individual can finish the meeting in Mombasa at 10 and join the meeting in Nairobi online. So they don't have to miss. So there are many benefits, and that's why we are saying that the digital divide, we must eliminate it, because if we don't eliminate it, then it's only the ones who have this access who will continue to exploit its advantages, and the rest of our society who do not have access will continue to languish. And the question then becomes, what is the cost of empowering everyone? What is the cost of making everyone digitally empowered? If you wish, I can address that point a little bit.
Please do.
But before,
to get everything from here, so that the people who are viewing, people who are listening, the people who will share can get something to start on.
Let me just give an example of the school system, because I think, in my view, if you start the empowerment at the school level, at the educational level, then you see you really have a long-term sustainable opportunity to impact the larger society. We are told by our government, for example, that we have 15 million students in our basic education infrastructure set up. And I said earlier, each of those classes carry an average of 60 pupils. If you want to bring this down to 20, you will need to create 3 times the infrastructural requirement. Is this necessary? In my view, I don't think this is necessary, because it is costly. And if the pandemic ends, then you'll have overcapacity of classrooms. Even though our population is increasing, by the time our population reaches the size to fit all those classrooms, it's another 20, 30, 40 years, because it's 3 times the capacity we have. To me, it is actually maybe wasteful. Now, if we were to commit ourselves and say we are going digital, then we now look at what are the logistical difficulties we will face in implementing that commitment. First, if we assume we have 15 million kids, then you have to give those 15 million kids a receiving device. Yes. Like what the government pledged in the earlier years, to give us all a laptop or an iPad or whatever. Now, if we have that, then we have the basic component for receiving this information. Then the other one is assurance of affordable or subsidized internet. And then, of course, wider access. At the moment, I think the country is well covered in terms of internet access, but not totally. So we need to make sure that we have access everywhere in the country. Good internet, strong internet. I'm sure you've attended many meetings where everything goes off because the internet is too small. The bandwidth is very small, so you can't really sustain a large number of people. So you need that. So if internet is accessible, then you will be able to deliver. Then, of course, you have to train our teachers, because our teachers are way behind. Oftentimes, the children are even ahead of the teachers in terms of digital interest. So the teachers have to be trained. But the beauty of the system is that the teaching can be done centrally. You can have one teacher doing the online in Kenya Institute of Curriculum and Development in Nairobi, and that is beamed to all the schools with receiving devices in the country. And it's recorded. So in the event that the teacher is not able to access it for his pupils at that time, then they can download it and provide it when they have, when they're able to. So there is that advantage. And then the teacher can complement. If you recall, many years ago when we had the radio system, we used to have radio broadcasts, and then the teacher on the ground complements and adds and answers questions, because there was no direct engagement between the broadcaster and the pupils. But on the internet, you can even actually send questions as the lesson is being beamed. But you see, the commitment is actually to try and get the tablets. Now, 15 million tablets might cost maybe 100 billion or 150 billion, but that's cheaper than putting up 750 classrooms, the extra 750 classrooms you require to meet the needs of physical space. So in my view, you can get this done. And you see, now once you do it, you'd have actually gone a long ways to addressing the issue of digital divide. Because even after the pandemic, you'll still have this system in place for your pupils. And so the issue will be more or less have been addressed on a permanent basis. If you build classrooms, once the pandemic is gone, you will still have extra classrooms which you'll not know what to do with. So I think if someone was brave, this might be the way to go. But I don't know that this thinking is widespread.
Okay. Lovely. This is very good. And now we're coming to a close. Do you have anything else you want to share with us? Because you are an expert in this particular area, especially in education, but you can touch also on social aspect, on gender aspect, or as you summarize, and political aspect. Can we do parliament at home? Can it be done the way it is done? Yes.
I didn't get the last part. Can we do what at home?
Can Parliament operate digitally so that members of Parliament don't have to be in session all the time?
Of course they can, but the standing orders, they have to change those things fast, and that like your meeting in Texas. If you can do it from Kenya, why would you not be able to do your parliament from the constituency? However, that is something for them to address in their standing orders for the future. But something I wanted to mention as we are coming to the end is that even though we have had all these disadvantages, Hamisi, Kenya has actually been quite advanced. The youth in Kenya have been very aggressive in their utilization of digital space. We have something in Kenya called digital hubs. They are mostly based in Nairobi. These are what you call incubators for developing digital experts, people who write software to solve different problems. And quite a few things have come out of these digital hubs. And if you are aware too, there's talk that the software using the original M-Pesa by Safaricom was locally developed. And you can see where that the M-Pesa service has taken us, both now nationally and also outside of our borders. So there is actually the potential to do a lot more. So that if we actually go digital, we shall actually be giving our kids more and more opportunities to exploit their abilities. And one of the ways they can do it is working online. There is a lot of opportunities working online everywhere in the world. So if you have the ability, they will ask you to do things from Nairobi or from wherever you are for someone in other parts of the world. So having improved digital capacity has that advantage that in addition to just empowering the people in access to information, ability to do things, access to service, you're actually creating employment. There are young people who do things online, and the number of hits they get, those number of people visitation and so on, if it reaches a certain number, actually they get paid.
Okay.
There are young people who finish college and sit at home, and the father goes and opens the door and say, "What's wrong with you? Don't you want to dress up and go and look for a job?" And the guy tells the dad, "Man, I have a job." And the father says, "What job?" Yeah, and the guy says, "I'm earning. Have I asked you for money lately?" So there is a lot of things that our young people can actually do. And most of our young people are quite savvy in terms of working online, learning things online, a lot faster than the older generation. So what we should do is to give them the opportunity, to empower them, give them the devices, lower the cost of internet. That is the biggest impediment to digitization. If you can lower the cost of internet, our young people will be able to get online and do things for themselves, even when they don't have a formal employment.
That has been very insightful and very happy. Anything on as you close? Anything you want to add as we close?
what I want to say is that our biggest problem sometimes has nothing to do with the technology itself. It's more to do with us human beings and our ability to accept and execute change. Like I said earlier, you'll find that our kids are more technologically savvy and aware than ourselves. If we accept that, then we are actually open to accepting change and accepting to move forward. But
Yes.
a lot of the people who I know who should have gone on, say, online teaching, haven't done so for no reason other than just being shy of taking the plunge, just shy of making mistakes. Of course, it's something new. Every time you do something new, there is a bit of stress before you feel comfortable with the system. It takes time. But we really all need to just accept that change is inevitable. We are living in what is called the fourth industrial revolution, where everything is driven digitally, and the engine of that system is the internet. And the
Yes.
sooner we start learning to cope with this, the better we will be, and the better our country will be, which in a lot of ways is a lot ahead of a lot of other similar countries in terms of digital ability.
Yeah, in fact, one of the group that I was talking to on this issue, apart from the cost of the internet, they were talking about power. Power has really affected people in terms of yes, electricity.
It is true, and I was thinking about that. But you see, power is a fairly temporary problem, because we have to commend the government for trying to disperse power to as many places in the country as possible. 25 years ago, that would be a big issue. Right now, power is within reach. But you see, the other issue is that power is not even as critical as the internet or bandwidth, because once you charge your laptop or your phone, if you're using the phone, it takes time before the charge goes down. So even if you don't have power in your house and you go to a neighbor's and charge your devices, you can still work online for at least 1 hour before you need to go and recharge again. You get what I'm saying? I think we need to be flexible. Once you are flexible, it becomes a lot easier to work in this space.
Okay. Where do we get this technology? You know, Prof, you're in the university, you have those all the people like us. How do we get this training that you offer your students? Because now even the aged need to do technical training for knowledge purpose.
Hamisi, is a lot of this training is actually available online.
Oh,
you'll be surprised, and that's why you are seriously disadvantaged if you do not know how to use online activities, because everything you really want, most of the time you can get it online. For example, I'll give you an example. Say, for example, you want to know, I'll give you an example. A few years ago, the battery of my wife's car ran down, and to open the door of that car, you had to use a remote key, and that remote key was not able to open because the battery was down, so it didn't work. So there is a physical key to use. Now we tried to use the physical key, it still would not work. And now we were looking for all kinds of ways to reach the battery in this car in order to be able to charge it. Unfortunately, the battery was so hidden, you had to open the door of the car to get to the battery. Now we can't open the door of the car. Eventually, my wife actually went and checked online, and she found the solution.
Okay.
Can you believe? Yeah. She just said, this car, I'm having a problem opening this car. What should I do? And somebody answered and said, okay, stick your key, do this, yank the door, and it opened. So, there's so many things you can actually get online that, even when you are sick, people say don't trust Dr. Google, because sometimes it's the only access you have to information, and rather than a doctor. The doctor may not be near, but you can be able to get that information. So everything you really want to ask down on earth today, you can get it online. And that's how important this is. Now, if you want to learn how to use the system, just go online and say, I need instruction on how to use online this, and you'll get it.
Okay.
So after this, just try anything. Just type it in there. You know, ask the computer to tell you. I don't know. For example, if you want to buy a car,
yes,
and say somebody's telling you a Premium Toyota versus a Nissan this, if you type those on your computer, you'll be able to get adequate information about each of those brands to be able to make a reasonable judgment. So this is what they call digital literacy, being able to use the system to be able to benefit from it. Now, if you don't have that, and that's why the divide is can also be between you could have all the access, but because you have not educated yourself, you do not exploit the tools that you have to the maximum. So you could have a digital divide, even at the upper end, between somebody, one person and another. And I would say open-mindedness, flexibility, willingness to learn from your children because they know more than you. They are. I'll give you a personal example. I know we are running out of time. A personal example. I traveled to Nairobi recently, and I wanted to watch a game on TV, but we didn't have DSTV in that particular place. So I called my daughter, who is 16 years old, back in Eldoret, and say, how can I connect to DSTV from here? And we were able to work it out. Within a few minutes, I was able to watch the game on my laptop without having DSTV in Nairobi. The DSTV that we were using was based in Eldoret. And now we were able to get that information on a laptop in Nairobi. So you can see, let me ask you another question, Amis. Whenever you have a problem with your smartphone, who helps you out?
This gadget is so magical. You just Google and you see the answer.
For me, when I can't do anything on my iPhone, I ask the kids, I said, how do you solve this problem?
Yes.
Oftentimes they are able to sort it out because they are more digitally aware than us. And so that is something, even as teachers, we should always be aware that our children actually come into this sphere much more informed than we might be at this point in time.
Okay. Lovely. This has been a very good session, Professor. We want to really thank you for availing your time to share with us these insights of the digital divide. Now, aware that the digital divide can be closed, the gap can be closed if we address all those challenges that you said and those proposals. And I think we are ready in Kenya. Again, I must thank the system. We are better off than some of other people in the other countries. But the world is now so small. The world is so open. You can be able to discuss all these things with other people, and you can learn so much. And therefore, everybody must go back to digital learning, digital literacy, as you call it, Professor. So I really want to thank you on behalf of the viewers, on behalf of Jaslika. You have been very helpful. And I would like to ask Sheila to continue these sessions. I think these sessions would be very useful to our members, but also to the public. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hamisi, for giving me the opportunity.